Magic the Gathering's Unfinity just exited spoiler season, and now we know every single card in the set. So in today's video, we are going to be looking at the top 10 most expensive cards in the set and talking about why they may be so expensive and why that maybe just doesn't matter for Unfinity. Now, if you haven't seen a ton about Unfinity, I'd recommend you check out my other video where I talk about the mechanics of the set and break those all down, but I am going to talk a little bit about it now. So the first thing to note is Unfinity is an unset. A lot of the cards are joke cards, are meant to be fun, and are not legal in tournament play. For example, Get Your Head in the Game, which is on the left here, is not legal in tournaments and has you do things that don't fit within Magic's rules. And you can tell that because it has a little acorn sticker at the bottom. However, Sanguine Sipper does not have that acorn, and it is tournament legal. This is the first unset to have both legal and non-legal cards, and it's the entire reason I'm even doing this video. If this was a normal unset, I wouldn't look at value, because there really is no value to these cards because they're not meant to be played anywhere outside of like a draft or sealed environment. However, with this set, they are changing that. The other thing to note, while technically acorn cards are not legal in official formats, in formats like Commander, a lot of playgroups allow cards that are silver bordered, which is what they used to be, or have the little acorn signal, just because they're not tournament sanctioned. They don't have to follow the rules exactly, and a lot of the time there are some really fun cards. Either way, we're going to be looking at the top 10. I am excluding lands from the top 10 because we're going to talk about those separately after we talk about the 10 most expensive cards. Either way, let's jump into this, starting with number 10, and that is Mira of the Magic Strings. It's 1 black and a red for a legendary creature Minotaur Performer 3/3. It lets you pay 1, a black and a red, and note the name of target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield face down. It's a 3/3 creature with, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may create a copy of the card with the noted name. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost, and if this creature would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. So in essence, you turn your instants and sorceries into creatures, which then whenever they deal damage, you get to cast those spells. Very, very fun strategy, and you will notice by the normal rare stamp that this is a legal card. This is something you can play in any game of Commander. You can play it in Vintage, you can play it in Legacy, any of the Eternal formats, but it's also only $2.99. Next, we have Exit through the Grift Shop. Now, I want to note this one is an acorn card, so this one really isn't legal in any format, so the only reason you'd be buying it is if you either like the card and think it's funny and just want to own a copy, or if you're planning on using it in like Commander or something and your playgroup is okay with that. Either way, it's a sorcery that's 2 and a black, and it says, yell who wants a souvenir and announce the name of a non-land card in your graveyard. Each player in an ungame who can hear you may bid life. You start the bidding at 0. The high bidder loses life equal to the high bid. Then copy the card and you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. If you didn't win the bid, you gain life equal to the high bid and create that many treasure tokens. Basically, you are bidding off a card. I think that's really, really interesting. Again, it really only works in like even a draft environment. I mean, in a Commander game, you're bidding with your opponents, which doesn't necessarily seem as fun. But again, $3. Kind of weird. Now, a little disclaimer I do want to give these are all in USD. They are all from Card Kingdom, which typically does have slightly higher prices, but it's a nice baseline to compare all of the card prices across all of my videos and keep it pretty consistent there. The other thing, this is filmed like the day after spoiler season finished, so these are all pre-order prices. Expect them to fall. Number 8, Standard Procedure, another acorn card that's $2.99. It's an instant. It doesn't cost anything, but you pay 1 and reveal Standard Procedure from your hand. Choose an instant or sorcery card with mana value 3 or less currently legal in the standard format. Standard Procedure becomes that card until end of turn. So in essence, this can become anything from standard. So this depends on when you cast it. You know, when you cast it now versus when you cast it in 2 years, there will be different cards legal and standard. It does not say that you have to own the card, so you can just pick any 3 or less value instant or sorcery. Technically, this is a very, very powerful card. You basically pay 1 more, and then it becomes any instant or sorcery in standard that with mana value 3 or less. Overall, really cool. Overall, it's a fun card. It's kind of a powerful card, and if your group does let you run uncards, it's one I could definitely see people wanting to play. Next, we have Space Valerian. It is a legal card, and it is 2 white blue for a legendary planeswalker Jace. It's a 3 loyalty planeswalker, and it has Space Sculptor. Space Valerian divides the battlefield into alpha, beta, and gamma sectors. If a creature isn't assigned to a sector, its controller assigns it to one. Opponents assign first. So in essence, every player is going to divide their creatures into 3 groups. And you'll just note that like, hey, these creatures are in my alpha group, these creatures are in my beta group, and these creatures are in my gamma group. Then Space Valerian says, +1, creatures in each sector can be blocked this turn only by creatures in the same sector. So let's say your opponent has 3 creatures and they put 1 in each sector, and you decide to put all your creatures in one sector. Now, only creatures within the same sector can block other creatures that are attacking. So if I have creatures attacking in alpha sector, creatures my opponents control in beta sector cannot block. Then, -1, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature in the sector of your choice, so encouraging you to put a lot in one sector. But then -5, destroy all creatures in the sector of your choice. That does include yours, but again, you can kind of sculpt the battlefield however you want. Pretty interesting. It's a play off of like Rampaging River, I think. It's a really old Magic card that kind of did the same thing, but it divided it into 2. Kind of interesting to see that there, and interesting to see that it is a legal card. Then we have Far Out. This is a 3-drop enchantment in white. Rather than choose the indicated number of modes for spells and abilities you control, you may choose 1 or more modes. You can't choose any mode more than once. So this is a $5 card. It is not legal, but it is one of those cards that doesn't feel like an uncard, and so a lot of the time groups are going to be okay with it. The only reason this isn't considered a legal card is it doesn't work within the rules. So this is the example of a lot of playgroups will allow uncards, but not the like really ridiculous ones, like the ones that make you start stacking cards on your head. Your group may not be okay with that, but this feels like a Magic card. It just doesn't work within the rules, and so I expect that this will be seeing a lot of play in Commander, even though it's not technically legal, and so that does lead to a higher price. Next, we have Mira the Magnificent. It's 2 blue and a red. This is a legal card, by the way, so it's a 2/4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, open an attraction. Then you can pay X and tap and exile target instant or sorcery card with mana value X from your graveyard and choose an attraction you control that doesn't have a midway counter on it. Put a midway counter on it. Whenever you visit that attraction, copy the exiled card. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So in essence, you're trying to open a bunch of attractions, and then you're trying to get a bunch of instants and sorceries on those attractions, and then whenever you visit the attraction, you get a copy of the instant or sorcery. It's kind of similar to that first commander we looked at, where you're taking instants and sorceries in your graveyard and getting to cast them again. Mira cares about going to attractions. The first commander actually cared about like those hitting your opponent. Attractions are kind of cool. And the fact that every time you're casting an instant or sorcery spell, you're opening an attraction, I actually think that's powerful on its own, because each time that is an artifact. Even if you're not doing anything with the attractions, they are artifacts. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand, open an attraction, that seems, or even create an artifact, that seems pretty good. Either way, that's $5. I think this will be the most popular commander from the set. It's kind of designed to be. Then we have Greatest Show in the Multiverse. It's a 7-drop artifact enchantment saga, and it says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, exile 5 instant and or sorcery cards you own with the same artist and different names from outside the game. Then stages 1, 2, and 3 are choose one of the exiled cards at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. It is an acorn card, but this is one of those cards that, again, doesn't feel necessarily too or like too ridiculous. It just doesn't work within the rules of the game. You can't look at artists, but it's one of those things where you're probably always going to choose the same 5 cards. And it's actually a video I've considered doing of like, what are the best 5 cards to do with this? If that'd be something you're interested in, leave a comment down below, and that will be a video coming up. I've been kind of looking at that and saying, hey, what is the best? You know, is being able to cast Emergent Ultimatum and all these cards worth it? Or do you pick something where it's just good value all around? I think it's a really fun card. It's $5. It's another one where I could see a lot of playgroups being like, yeah, that's a fine card. Next, at number 3, we have Saw in Half. This is a 3-drop instant, and it says destroy target creature. If that creature dies this way, its controller creates 2 tokens that are copies of that creature, except their base power is half the creature's power and their base toughness is half that creature's toughness. Round up each time. So basically, you're creating 2 copies of a creature that have half power and toughness, but you are killing it. This seems really, really good, especially in black. It means you can take any like ETB effect and get it 2 more times. You can get Die's effect and then still have the creature. Overall, seems like a very, very good value piece. Either way, that's going for $9. I expect to actually see that a lot. Next, we have Vortos, Steward of Myth. It's 1 in a red, legendary creature, human gamer. As Vortos, Steward of Myth, enters the battlefield, choose a named magic character. Each spell you cast with the chosen character in its name, flavor text, or art costs Wooburg less to cast. This effect only reduces the amount of colored mana you pay. So this is basically Morthfon, except for magic characters. This is not a legal card, but again, it's one of those ones where it seems very commandery. A lot of groups are going to say, yes, this is fine, and you're going to get a lot of really, really, really fun decks around this. This is part of a cycle of all the different types of Magic players, and so I am excited to see what kind of decks people build with this. just like entirely. You know, you're going to find the decks that are Nico Bolas decks, or even, you know, some maybe more obscure characters. Obviously, the more common a character is, the easier this deck is going to be to build, but I'm really excited to kind of see what happens here. And it's going for $12, despite being a non-legal card. And then the number one card is a legal card. It is Comet Stellar Pup. It's 2 red and a white for a legendary planeswalker Comet. It has 5 loyalty and only 1 loyalty ability, kind of. It has a 0 and it says roll a 6-sided die. If you roll a 1 or a 2, you add 2 loyalty, then create 2 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens. They gain haste until end of turn. If you roll a 3, it's -1 and it returns a card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. If you roll a 4 or 5, it deals damage equal to the number of loyalty counters on him to a creature, then you remove 2. And then if you roll a 6, you add 1, and you may activate Comet Stellar Pup's loyalty abilities 2 more times this turn. So you're rolling 6-sided die, you don't get to control it. Now, it can never come in and just kill itself. Like, it will at most lose 2 loyalty. So that's good. However, you really don't get to control it. If you are wanting to return something from your graveyard to your hand, you can't control that that's going to necessarily happen. If you don't have anything in your graveyard, you can't control that you're not going to get that, and you don't get to say no. So you will always lose that loyalty associated with it. But I do think it's really interesting. It is also possible that you get a bunch of 6s. You know, you could get a 6 and then maybe a 1 or a 2 and then another 6 and then a 1 or a 2. So you could theoretically play this and then win the game that turn, especially if you combine it with cards that care about dice rolling and let you re-roll dice. So I think this is a really interesting card. I just don't think it's necessarily powerful. I think it's just one of those cards that could technically win the game the second it hits the battlefield, but otherwise a lot of the time it's not going to do what you want. All right, so those are the top 10 most expensive cards, excluding lands. Let's quickly talk about lands. So these are some of the basic lands from the set. These are called the planetary basic lands, and right now they're going for $5 a piece. The other basic lands in the set are these, which are actually on the planet, and they are going for $2 a land. And you will find these in roughly 3/4 of all packs. So 3/4 of all packs will have these, 1/4 of all packs will have these, and that is kind of true of collector boosters. It's just basically collector boosters have 2 basic land slots, so you technically have you have 2 1 in 4 chances of getting one of these in a collector booster or getting 2 of them. Now, when you consider the fact, when we looked at pricing, that every single pack is coming with a $2 land, that looks pretty good. Now, what I expect these to do in price is I expect these to temporarily tank in price and then slowly creep back up. It's kind of what happens with unsets. Because every pack has at least one of these type of lands, they're not going to necessarily be hard to get. If you buy them in a bundle, if you buy a box of Unfinity, it ends up being cheaper than buying those lands individually, typically, especially when you consider all the other cards you're getting. They're going for about $114 on Amazon right now for 36 of these basic lands, plus all the other cards. So I expect them to tank temporarily, but then when they stop printing Unfinity, these look really, really good. So I expect them to go up in price, similar to how Unstable lands did. The other thing to note, so yeah, you can do that, but you'll also notice you get a box topper with the box. So let's talk about those. They are these planetary shock lands. And so you will always get a foil one as a box topper, and then 1 in 24 land slots will actually have a shock land in the basic land slot. So that is both collector boosters and standard boosters. But again, remember, collector boosters have 2 land slots in them. So there is, 2 1 in 24 chances of getting them. And right now on Card Kingdom, they are going for $60 a piece. I don't expect that to stay that way. If you can get a box for probably around $100, that is a guaranteed one of these. I expect it to drop in price, but they do look very, very beautiful, and it is something they're trying to encourage you to buy this set for, even though half the cards you can't really use. And that kind of gets me to my last point. You're not really buying Unfinity for the value, at least you shouldn't be. It's a fun experience. If you can get, 5 other people and do a fun draft, or however many people you really want, it is a very, very fun time. But don't buy this looking for the value. It's meant to be a good, enjoyable experience, and that's about it. I want to know your guys' thoughts on Unfinity in the comments down below. Are you going to be picking any of it up? I personally will probably pick up a couple packs, just enough to do a draft. But yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.